Hello and welcome to an Assetto Corsa Competizione video, where today we have my first ever race from the competition server in ACC. Never done one of these before, obviously, otherwise it wouldn't be my first race, but yeah, we're going to be starting in 6th position. We are racing at Silverstone and I'm driving the Aston Martin V8 Vantage, the 2019 GT3 car. This is a setup that I am going to be using for this race. Feel free to pause on each of the tabs and take notes to basically use as a setup for yourself. But just quickly, before we get underway with the formation lap here, down in the description below is links to my social media channels. You also see them popping up on the screen here in front of you as well, and also got a Discord server. Feel free to join that. That way you can kind of come and talk to me and various other people who ask questions about either what you see here in the video, about ACC, other sims, and kind of setups, or just general hints and tips and stuff. It'd be cool to have you get involved in part of the conversation over there. So yeah, feel free to join that. But as you can see, we are underway, rolling with the formation lap. And we're using the obviously the in-game system, where we've got the widget up on the screen there, basically telling us to stay in a certain zone. In this kind of instance, where you see the car or the little icon within the green zone, that indicates that I'm in and around the right spot. If the arrow is pointing backwards and is red, it means I need to slow down and move further back. Likewise, if I'm too far behind where I need to be, it will turn up to be a green forward-facing arrow. But at the moment, just trying to generate some heat in both the brakes and also in the tyres as well. The tyre pressures are obviously dropping because there's no heat in them whatsoever, so they're pretty low at the moment. So that's why we're doing some tyre weaving here, and also just trying to generate the heat in the brakes, which will then also help to heat up the tyres a little bit and bring the tyres back up to pressure. So just doing some short little bursts with the accelerator whilst also riding the brakes, just to help generate that heat and get them into bedded into the discs and into the pads. So skipping forwards a little bit further into the formation lap, because watching me at a very slow speed weave backwards and forwards across the circuit trying to heat up the tyres isn't all that interesting. We come into the next phase of the formation lap, where we have to form up in the 2x2 formation, as indicated with the HUD widget changing to show the car icon that I need to form up on the left side of the grid, or in the left-hand train. You need to do that fairly quickly. I think you have about 15 odd seconds to get outside of the red zone if you're in the red zone. Being at the front of the field, it's pretty easy to get out of that sort of area, but being further back, it's more difficult. And as you can see, just a flashing red arrow there telling me that I need to be further over to the left than where I was positioned. Otherwise I'll end up getting a drive-through penalty, I believe, or stop-and-go penalty, one of the two. But either way, as you come up to the grid, as long as you're driving over the actual grid boxes on the side of the grid that you're on, you'll be absolutely fine when it goes to the actual green light. So here we are then, preparing ourselves. We get this nice little indicator that tells us we need to stay within underneath 60 kilometers an hour. And there is the green light, so 45 minutes of racing is underway now. The Bentley looked like he got a pretty good start alongside us, although he's gone a little bit deep going into turn 1 there and made contact with one of the other Aston Martins, shoved him out wide. I come very, very close to collecting and sideswiping the car on my right-hand side here, which I believe is Dave Gaming, as we come on through. It's shown that we're in 22nd position in both the position board and also the relative down in the bottom left. But we are actually now up into P5, having gained a single position there in the opening first few corners. Looks like we've got a pretty good run coming out of Beckett's and Chapel, and we're now in the slipstream of the orange Aston Martin, trying to go around the outside as we're coming into Stowe Corner here, giving a little bit of a squeeze at the apex, trying to carry the speed in. Managed to stay alongside, going around the outside there. That's going to give me the inside line under braking here coming into this chicane, so we should gain the position. I think there was contact between a couple of the cars behind as well. That's gone and gifted me a load of free room, as we're now right up on the rear bumper of the Bentley in front. So the battle for third position now commences, and indeed cars behind have dropped off, which allows me to focus on the cars in front and not have to worry about the cars behind. So that's alleviated some pressure there, which is good. Coming here into farm, Tight right-handed hairpin, and then into the loop. Various different lines going on, and the Bentley was a little bit slow at the apex there. Bumped him on the rear bumper. Just double checking the damage there as the Lexus has gone off the road and out wide on the right-hand side there as we're coming out onto the Wellington Straight. Just adjusting the pit strategy a little bit, and there you can see time required to repair or do a pit stop is 30.374 seconds as the Lexus is a little bit slow coming through Brooklands. That's going to allow us to get up alongside on the outside though for Luffield, which is a very long way to go around the outside there, so we'll slot back in behind, try and get a good drive and a bit of slipstream coming down onto the start-finish straight here to begin our second racing lap, closing up but not really going to be up far enough alongside to try and mount a challenge coming into turn 1 here. Such a fast high-speed corner, it's not really possible unless you're very much up alongside coming out the braking zone. Again, we're closing up as we're coming into the entrance to Maggots and Beckett's. We'll just touch on the time in the pit stop service, in the pit strategy in just a moment, as we're trying to line ourselves up for a good run coming out of Beckett's here, which is exactly what we've got. Closing up the ground on the Lexus in front already, picking up the slipstream as well as we're halfway down the hangar straight, pulling up alongside, and we've got the inside line this time coming into Stowe corner. The Lexus trying to hold it fairly tight, make it a little bit difficult for me to slip on through, but I managed to gain the position anyway, so we're now up into P3. Now we can start to hunt the cars up in front of us. Just a quick glance in the mirror there just to see where the Lexus is, so I saw him coming up on the radar. But yeah, coming back to that pit stop time, 30 seconds to change the tyres. Should be 30 seconds flat, but I've got 0.374 seconds of damage at the front of the car, which would be from the tap from the Bentley. So that is the way to distinguish whether you got damage or not, is just set it to change tyre, turn everything else off, and then if you've got anything over 30 seconds flat, then you know you've got damage or you've got something turned on there, which you may not necessarily want. Obviously I don't need to change the brakes in this race, it's only 45 minutes. So I've just opted to change the tyres and also take on fuel, as I believe we do need to serve a mandatory stop in these CP races. And as you can see, we're pressurising the Bentley up in front. I did change the fuel load as well from the original car setup that I showed you earlier on. I believe it was up at like 64 litres when I showed you the car setup that I was using. I actually dropped it down to 53 or 54 litres for the race here, planning on taking fuel in the pit stop because you can change tyres and take fuel at the same time. So yes, I will be needed to take fuel here in this race, but I plan on doing some of that in the pit stop to make the car a little bit lighter rather than take the entirety of the fuel needed to go the entire race distance. So continuing to press on at the moment. We're in a pretty good position. We've had a fairly good start, managed to keep ourselves pretty clean apart from the slight tap on the Bentley, and we are right there with the leading pair, although dipped the inside wheels over the curb going through Stowe there at the apex, kicked the car sideways. Managed to gather that one back up though and hold on to that. This car is quite nice and easy to drive, I would say. It's the only thing you really got to watch out for is the power coming off the corners, especially in the off the slower turns. Once the turbo kicks in, it can be quite aggressive and spin up the rear tyres quite easily. But everywhere else, the car feels really, really good. It's really good under braking. It's quite nicely manageable in the slides, and as it's a front-engine car, it suits my driving style quite nicely, and it produces a very, very nice sound as well. But yeah, as you can see from that slight little moment that I had in Stowe, about a quarter of the lap ago, it's dropped us off the back of the two leading cars in front, but if we can keep our head down and keep our focus, we'll be able to close up onto the back of them once again as we're into Luffield, trying to double apex the corner a little bit. Reasonable drive out through the exit, coming through Woodcut. Completely flat out, just kind of brushing the curb there on the inside. We did previously do a league race here with AOR, which is up on the channel. I did live stream it, I was driving the Mercedes AMG GT3, but it was in the wet, so the approach from wet conditions to dry conditions around this circuit is it's very different. I had to kind of relearn the circuit somewhat and what kind of lines and curves to be using. Is in the wet conditions there's a few curves that you need to stay away from. You can't really touch unless you want to risk the car going round on you, whereas here in the dry you can really hammer and make use of the curbs as they're all quite flat and the circuit is really quite smooth as well. So you want quite a stiff setup in terms of suspension and dampers. The setup that I'm using here in this race is the aggressive default with some tweaks. I think there could be some more improvements made to make the car just that little bit quicker as well. You can see the guys in front, cars moving around on them a little bit, whereas ours is a little bit more planted in most places. Getting slowed down for the right-handed hairpin there. Now coming into the loop, just trying to open up the corner a little bit more for ourselves, and you can see once again the Audi struggling through the mid-corner there. Car breaking away from him, which has slowed him down a little bit and brought both myself and the Bentley even closer onto the rear of his car. The Bentley's very close, I think, having a little bit of a look, and indeed he is. I think he's also going defensive to me as well, as I was closing up behind Bentley, looking down the inside of the Audi. That's not going to quite work for him. He got pinched at the apex there, almost going 3 wide as we're coming into Luffield, but it'll be an extremely long way to go around the outside there. Tried to go for the switchback, but got pinched by the Bentley at the second late apex. Bentley spotted that at the very last moment and tried to give a little bit more room, and in doing so kind of forced himself out wide. But we live to fight another day. I kind of saw and read that one coming and unfolding in front of me, so backed out of that one before we ended up making contact. Now coming into Maggots and Beckett's here, just trying to set out the line right to get the good drive coming off the exit of Beckett's here, coming through Chapel now onto Hangar Straight, and it looks like we're gaining a little bit of ground on the Bentley. We've also got the slipstream as well, so we're going to be closing up even more, looking to the outside as we're on the approach to Stowe. We're going to do the same thing as we did on lap 1, try and hang it around the outside, but the Bentley got the better measure of us here, so we'll go for the switchback instead and see if we can get to the right hand side. If we can time the braking right, we can swing it around the outside here, go a little bit deep, and I have the inside for the second apex, and that is exactly what we've managed to do, and pulled off a phenomenal move under braking there around the outside of the Bentley to snatch second position. Very, very pleased with that one. It's a nice move that you can do there in that corner, is if you are on the outside, just brake that little bit later, go a little bit deeper, but leave the car width's room on the inside there. If you do manage to keep it on the circuit, it will set you very nicely up to have the advantage with the inside line going into the double right-hander, and the position's near enough yours there, unless they've got their car about half a car length ahead of yours in terms of the overlap, at which point it'll be a little bit more difficult to kind of accelerate through the corners effectively, and they essentially take away your acceleration zone. That will allow them to defend and hold on to the position. But now that we've dispatched the Bentley, eyes immediately turn to focus on the Audi in front and see if we can hunt down him. Certainly seems that I'm probably running a lighter fuel load than the rest of the drivers at the moment. Certainly seems like the car's had the pace over the other guys. And just in a number of places the car just seems a little bit more settled and a bit more planted as well in comparison to some of the other cars. Best lap time so far at the moment is a 2:07.26, which is fairly reasonable. We can drop down into sub 2-minute lap times, so we're bouncing off the rev limiter coming out the exit of Beckett's there in second gear, so I think I'm going to have to use third for the final right-hander instead. Hooking up the apex very nicely there. Going through Stowe, running the curb on the exit, which is one of those that you can't really touch in the wet. Coming into here, obviously you want to avoid the big red sausage curve, hammer the curb on the inside, use this curb on the outside a little bit as well. If you really want to, you can kind of straddle that one slightly, but that is one of the curves that you really do need to avoid in the wet. Likewise with this entry curb on the outside here. You can hammer the curb on the inside, both in the wet and also in the dry. Ideally, avoid the curb on the left-hand side going through the what would be the F1 turn 2, and then coming through here. You can use the apex curbs, not really use the exit curb as we're right underneath the rear wing of that Audi. If we're in the nose of bumper cam, we'll be staring into the internals through the rear end of that Audi. We're lining ourselves up for a move down the inside coming into Brooklands. We're not quite there, got the overlap yet as of yet, but the Audi is giving us the room. So we've got that pretty much done and dusted, although we haven't quite managed to nose ahead enough coming through Luffield. So we're side by side trying to hang it around the outside. There he is on the right hand side as we're coming onto the start finish straight, looking over with the track IR to see where he is and kind of keep an eye on him as we're coming up towards Copse Corner. This is going to be difficult to go side by side with, so we'll try and go for the switchback, as I know that he'll be running the tighter line going into there, which will force them deep, and that's exactly what has happened. So we've managed to get the move done on the exit of turn 1 there. Coming into Maggots and Beckett's, just need to hammer these curbs and make sure we get a nice, smooth, tidy line coming through this section, which we do quite nicely. As you can see, we're up on our previous fastest at the moment, although we're losing a little bit of time coming down the straight here, so I haven't quite had the exit that I would usually have. The Audi is still lurking reasonably close behind, 0.3 seconds away, bouncing on the grass on the inside there of Stowe, which isn't going to help us. The Audi's starting to close up a little bit, but he's not close enough, or going full move coming here into the chicane of Vale. Now we're coming out of the final corner in the kind of F1 GP layout, which is Club Corner, on the run towards Abbey. And quite controversially, I do actually like this arena section here in Silverstone. A lot of people prefer the older layout with the old Abbey chicane and then going through Bridge Corner. And whilst yes, Bridge Corner was absolutely fantastic and phenomenal and a real pleasure to drive through, quite a challenge for the drivers, I do actually quite like the layout here, because I didn't really ever like the Abbey chicane, and nor did I like the corner that is between Brooklands and Bridge Corner, the first left-hander. I didn't really like that one too much. It was only really Bridge Corner that I liked, whereas I like the new Abbey, and I quite like the Village and Loop and kind of Aintree complex, because there's a few different lines that you can take through there, and it kind of really challenges the driver in the slow speed sections, especially the car setup, and also in the wet, Aintree can be a little bit of a challenge as well, as you kind of need to breathe on the throttle a little bit and just lift slightly going through there. It's not quite completely flat out in wet conditions, so yeah, another challenge there, which just makes the circuit a little bit more technical than it was, that I quite enjoyed. So continuing to press on at the moment, still got that lead to the Audi behind, 0.7 seconds at the moment, so we're starting to slowly open the gap up. Everything on the car is looking pretty good. Tyre pressures at the front are looking pretty good on the front left. Front right is down a little bit, but we haven't really got to too many corners that kind of really work the front right at the moment. Just a couple of corners going through Maggots and Beckett's. Well, it's only really the one corner going through Beckett's that works the front right, which is obviously the left-hander midway through. It's more kind of farm curve, which is this left-hander that we're going into now, and then also the Loop and Aintree and Brooklyn. So you'll see the tyre pressure increase as we come through those corners, as the rear end is trying to break away from me a little bit there under braking. It's just shifting down through the gears, differential kind of kicking in, and yeah, wanting to lock up the rear tyres a little bit. So you can see the tyre pressure's now starting to creep up. It'll creep up a little bit more as we come into Brooklands, but even then it's a little bit low from where I would like it to be. And then the two rear tyres are too high in terms of tyre pressure for my liking. Generally I try to keep it between 27.5 and 28 psi, kind of in and around 27.7, 27.8 is the ideal. But as you can see, making some changes to the fuel load there, and we shall also skip ahead a few laps as well, as we're continuing to basically just run in free and clear air. Nothing eventful happened at all, other than me just setting some more fairly decent lap times in the 2-minute flat region, and extending the gap to second place behind. So you can see in the relative board it's now over 4 seconds. We've got some a little bit of lap traffic up in front as well, which we're closing up to. And as you can also see down in the bottom right next to the speedo is the fuel load that I have remaining, which is 5.5 litres. So we're getting very close to me needing to make a pit stop, and that will obviously be coming in the next 2 laps. Clobber the curve there coming into Vaux. You obviously want to avoid that sausage curve there because it really does unsettle the car. You also want to do the same as well at the apex of Club Corner coming onto this F1 start-finish straight here. Go a little bit deep going through Abbey, but just about managed to keep it in and around on the circuit there or thereabouts. Just pushing a little bit too hard and just kind of losing a little bit of concentration. But having made the mistakes, very much aware that I'm making those mistakes, and also the back marker as well, kind of struggling a little bit for traction, but he stays very nicely out of my way there and allows me to slip on through without being impeded coming into Aintree and onto the Wellington Straight. And you can see as people have been lapping, people have been locking up wheels in a few various different places. Also laying down some rubber on the exit, hence all the skid marks and everything. But we'll be diving into the pit lane now to serve our pit stop. So we get the car slowed down for 50 kilometers an hour, engage the pit speed limiter, which we managed to do, unlike what I usually manage to do in AOR. And I've also made a couple of quick little adjustments to the tyre pressures for the tyres that I'll be taking on here in this pit stop. We're repairing any suspension and also bodywork damage as well as we stop in our box. Pretty much bang on perfect. One of the cool things here with the pit box or the pit stops is you have to disengage the ignition before they take you up on the jacks. And as you can see, I'm able to keep control of the track and look around the camera, and you can see the pit crew doing the work of changing the tyres. Looks like the fuel man is done with the fuel hose, so we'll get dropped off the jacks. You have the ignition set back on, although I forgot to re-engage it, and then you have to restart the car and then refire it up. So the ideal way would be, as soon as you stop in the box and you go up on the jacks, is click the ignition button back on again, so that when you get dropped off the jacks you just need to start the engine, the car will fire up much quicker. But yeah, kind of fudged that slightly there. So we lost a couple of seconds, and as you can see we've dropped down a whole bunch of positions down into P14 with a few cars in front, but we've now got the fuel to go to the end of the race. We're also on fresh tyres, and it was at this point that I realised that in this particular CP race I may not have needed to have made the pit stop, or there wasn't a mandatory pit stop that I needed to serve. As you can see, Ferrari's gone a little bit deep there going through Stowe, so that's allowed us to gain a whole bunch of ground. And as we're kind of here lurking, we're actually going to go for a bit of a move down the inside. I was only really looking, just presenting myself in the mirrors there, kind of half thinking about going for the dive bomb, but then thought, actually no, I'll just brake at the usual point and just see what the other guy does. But he gave me plenty of room, basically just backed out of it and allowed me to go on through. I think he was very much aware that I'd just come out of the pit lane, was probably on fresh tyres and therefore going to be much quicker. So we're back up into P13 immediately, but yes, with 12 minutes and 20 odd seconds remaining, no one else really having gone into the pit lane as of yet, my car being a fair amount quicker than everyone else's at the early stage of the race, as I was able to make up some positions fairly easily, started to cotton on to the fact that I didn't actually need to make a pit stop, or there was no mandatory pit stop here in this 45-minute race. Some of them you do have to make them, make a mandatory stop, but in this particular one I didn't. But I didn't see that before going into the session, so that was a little bit annoying and a little bit frustrating, because what I've effectively done is now gone and thrown away a race win. But it's made things interesting for you guys and also me at the time that I was actually driving this, because I am doing this commentary post the race in editing. But we've now got the task of trying to gain as many positions as possible in these last 11.5 minutes to somewhat recover this race. Now thankfully everyone's not too far away, apart from the race leaders. I know they're going to be quite a bit further down the field, but the immediate positions are reasonably close. We can see P10 is 6.5 seconds up the road, so let's for now aim to see if we can get ourselves up into the top 10. Obviously P12, this Mercedes AMG, is right here in front of us. We are right on the rear bumper of him coming out the exit of Stowe there, and we're going to go for the move coming into Vale. Looking down the inside, under braking, we get that done and dusted quite nice, neat and tidily. So we're now up into P12, being unleashed to try and hunt down the guys in front. So P11 is 3.5 seconds up the road, P10 is still 6.5 seconds up the road, but we have the advantage of fresh tyres. The fuel load should be pretty even across the various different cars. Obviously a slight bit of variance depending on the fuel consumption of each car, but at least that will now be pretty much in and around the same sort of area in this this latter part of the race now. But yeah, it was a little bit frustrating to realise that I've gone and chucked away the race win here for my first CP race, but nonetheless, stick with us because things are about to get very, very interesting and quite fun as well. So fresh tyres, pushing on hard. As you can see, we're up on our previous fastest lap at the moment, obviously with the extra grip that we have with these fresh tyres. We're able to make use of that, and obviously with the fuel load also depleting as well, we're kind of getting into the realms of quali setup. So doing a 2-minute flat pretty much. The Porsche spinning off, almost spinning off to the right hand side of the circuit there. He's going to be slow on the run up towards Maggots, so we're going to try and go for that move, and indeed we do slip on through into 11th place before we get into the entry for Maggots. So that was pretty much a freebie there, being gifted that position with the Porsche's mistake on the worn tyres. You can see just how much grip or extra grip I have over everyone else just going through Maggots and Beckett's. I've already pulled out a second on the Porsche behind and closed the gap to P10 quite tremendously already in this first third of a lap here. So we're going to keep on pushing, see if we can get ourselves up into P10. P9 is now 6.5 seconds up the road, P8 is 17 seconds up the road, so they're quite a bit further away and quite a bit of a stretch for the remaining 8.5 minutes that we've got. But as you can see up in the top left, the delta that I have to our previous fastest lap time is way, way quicker. We're at 8 tenths up at the moment. So things are looking very good for this lap, providing we don't chuck it away under braking here coming into Village. And in fact, we gain about a tenth or so now coming into the loop. Continuing to press on hard. We just need good drive coming off the exit here, which we do manage to get. It's really good traction, and we're now a second up on our previous lap time. So we're going to be down in the 159s. Very low 159s as well with this lap time. And I think there probably is a bit more time that can be found in the car as well with the setup, and also if I spent just a little bit more time driving the Aston Martin, just to be a bit more familiar with it. 1.1 seconds up. This is going to be a high 58, in fact, I think. And indeed it is a 158.8 as we go over the start-finish line there. So some serious pace. We've got the gap to P10 now down to 3.3 seconds. 5.3 seconds to P9. And P8 is now down around 16 seconds from the 17 odd seconds that we're gaining. So we are literally gaining seconds on the guys in front. The car braking a little bit loose there as we were chucking it into the left-hander of Beckett's. Kind of tend to say that the very first little left-handed kink and then right-hander is Maggots, and then Beckett's is the left and right that follows, and then Chapel is the tiny left-handed kink that's out through the exit coming onto the hanger straight. Well, I'm not entirely sure if that is 100% correct. Just pairing up the turns there with the track names. And that's my first track limits warning, just running out a little bit wide on the exit of Stowe Corner there. So I've got 2 more that I can use before I get a 30-second stop and go penalty, I believe it is, for exceeding track limits too many times. There's a slow car up in front, also a yellow flag as well. So some incidents have occurred between a few cars, and there you can see an extra 2 from P8 that were 16, 17 odd seconds up the road, but they're now only 4 or 5 seconds up the road. So that's worked very nicely in my favour. Obviously you can see that I'm closing up on the 2 guys, P10 and P9 up in front as well. The gap's now down to less than 1.5 seconds. So this is really starting to fill me with quite a bit more confidence. Obviously I've got the added advantage as well with the much fresher tyres. I can therefore probably push a fair bit harder than these guys can and actually extract more pace and lap time out. And as we're coming over the line, you can see down the bottom left the lap times that everyone else is setting as I go and do a 1:59.0. So we are very much taking seconds out of the people in front and putting seconds on the people behind as well. So in the next lap or so, we'll be overtaking the guys in front. And as you can see, we're closing up the distance to this orange Aston Martin here in front of us as we come through Maggots and Beckett's, looking to get the good drive off and try and pick up the slipstream as we're coming onto the hangar straight. We're very much in the prime position to do that. He's going defensive immediately, covering off the inside line as we're on the run down towards Stowe. Should be able to swing it around the outside like we did on the first lap of the race, and that's exactly what we did with the extra grip and confidence there. So now our eyes turn to the Ferrari in front, and let's see how quickly we can get past him as he's shy of the apex there coming into Vale. So we'll see if we can try and potentially nip past him on the exit there and into Club Corner, going side by side, both of us having to breathe on the throttle and give each other racing room. Very nice, respectable driving from both of us, but we managed to eke out ahead coming into Abbey, although we had to lift a little bit more. But the Aston Martin there on the right hand side has gone and made a mistake coming through the old second turn there, and it's actually gone very deep under brake, and we had to take avoiding action to avoid getting hit down the side. And we now got the Ferrari, I believe, yes indeed it is, that's pretty much pulled up alongside us and capitalised and retaken the position through that. So we temporarily gained a place and then lost one, but we've got the speed and the confidence. Going to have a little bit of a look down the inside here, coming under braking into Brooklyn. So Ferrari's trying to make it tight. It is very tight to slip up the inside there, but we managed to do so and get that position back. So now we've got to see if we can get a good drive coming off here. So we're into the final 4 minutes. See if we can hunt down that Lexus that is there up in front. But that was a pretty frantic and action-packed lap, gaining 3 positions in the end. So we're now up into P8. Things are looking pretty good for us, catching the curb on the inside there a little bit awkwardly in turn 1, but still managed to keep the car on the surface of the racing track without too much drama. The Lexus is out wide, coming through Maggots and Beckett's here, trying to line up for a good run coming off the exit of the corner, which we managed to do using all the available road and a little bit more. Gained a few car lengths on P7 in front, so continue to see if we can get closer to him by the end of the lap and see where we can potentially mount. The challenge has gone a little bit deep though in Cops Corner. We're gaining a huge amount of time on him through that turn there. Going to have a little bit of a look to the inside, getting a little bit later on the brakes, going for the move down the inside. He's tried to hold it around the outside but gone a little bit deep there. I think possibly may have scared him into a slight mistake as well under braking, but that's now us up into P7, making these moves fairly aggressively, but obviously with the clock ticking down, we don't have a huge amount of time left in order to get as many places as we possibly can. So we're now up into P7. Let's see if we can get P6. Dave Gaming up in front of us. It's 2.5 seconds up the road though, so we've got our work cut out for us a little bit if we can manage to do that. But as you can see, it certainly seems like we've got the pace and the grip over the other guys around us. Very much doubt I'm going to be able to get P5 with him over 8 seconds up the road, so P6 is our only next realistic target if we can actually achieve that. Less than 2 minutes remaining now, so we'll be doing 2 more laps, I believe. I believe the leader, well yeah, the leader would have already crossed the start-finish line and probably started the penultimate lap. It would have been very, very close terms of the timer. But even with the move on the Lexus, taking about a second out of the car in front on that previous lap, so things are looking pretty good. But we still got a bit of a gap to close down, 2 seconds as we're coming into the entrance to Maggots. Beckett's really hammering the curb there, going through Maggots. Line wasn't so great in comparison to some of the previous laps coming through Beckett's, but still we are continuing to close and eat down away at the gap to the car in front. Coming into Stowe, a little bit shy of the apex, would have liked to have been a little bit tighter there. As you can see from the time delta up in the top left, we're losing time to our previous fastest as well. Also catching the curb there is certainly not going to help us, and that is just throwing away a whole chunk of lap time and possible ground that I could have made going through that corner there. So there we go. There's the confirmation that the lead is on the final lap then. And yeah, he's quite a bit up the road, unfortunately. So lost an awful lot of time with the pit stop, but the Audi in front really seemed to be struggling there, coming through the arena section. It's allowing us to close up quite nicely towards the rear of his car. We're actually within a second as well, so things are looking fairly good for trying to take the position on the final lap of the race. If we can get a little bit closer in the last few corners here, we're tighter to the apex coming through Brooklands. It's going to help us eat down a few more car lengths. And coming into Luffield as well, he's holding a nice tight line. But it looks like still managed to gain a little bit of time, and I think the drive coming off the corner was a little bit better for myself. I was able to straight line the car a little bit more. So now we just got to stick with him coming through turns 1 and then through Maggots and Beckett's here, because there's no way of making an overtake coming through that section, not unless he goes and makes an absolutely horrendous mistake. Coming into Maggots here, he's actually going to make that mistake, dropping the rear end of the car, so we slip on through and take that 6th position. That was slightly heart-in-mouth moment there to see the Audi spinning one way, or starting to spin one way, and then end up spinning the other, and thought he may potentially come back across in front of me, but fortunately he didn't. Kind of the momentum of the car continued to carry him off to the right-hand side and the inside of Beckett's, but that's allowed us to slip on through. But interestingly, 4th and 5th position are now actually battling away for position. They're going side by side as well. They're actually gone and lost a whole bunch of time on the last few corners. You can see them just up there in front of us. The gap is now down to under 3 seconds for both of them. They're still battling as well, so if we can continue to push hard through these next few corners, we could potentially be in with a shout of trying to actually pick up another position here, but we've gone a little bit too deep there going through Abbey. That's going to cost us a little bit of ground that we were catching them on. But coming through into Village and now into the loop, the Audi seems to be a little bit slow here. Try and hook up a better drive off the exit of the corner. That's exactly what we've done, so we've managed to nip 5th position. We've now got the Lexus just here in front, so is P4 on the cards before the end of the race here. Very, very close, just 2 more corners to go. Taking a slightly more defensive line coming into Brooklands, using the grip and the confidence in the car that I've got there. Having a bit of a look to the outside in Luffield, but that's not really going to work, so I need to get it tight on the exit and get a good drive coming off, which we managed to do so. But the Lexus also got a pretty good drive, and that is going to be us coming across the line in P5. Not going to quite be able to pull up alongside and overtake at the checkered flag, but nonetheless, what a race that ended up turning out to be. Obviously chucked away the race win, but it certainly made the last 15 minutes of the race interesting. Just a reminder, a link down in the description below to my Discord channel where we can talk about this race and any other questions that you may have. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, and please consider subscribing to the channel as well. That would be very much appreciated. But otherwise, thank you for watching the video, guys. Hopefully I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, have fun, stay safe, and take care.